Hello and welcome to this week's Step into Freedom podcast. I am Cledra Gross, if you're new to me, CEO, speaker, and author, and most importantly, a woman on a mission to help you create the life of your dreams. I am just coming from a networking event, and there is nothing that energizes me like being around women who are daring to go for the best version of themselves, the best version of their lives, the best business, just the best. And so I want you to know that this podcast is all about you stepping into the level of freedom that I know God has for you, whether that's a promotion, releasing weight, getting as healthy as you can get, finding the love of your life, writing that bestseller novel, being the best grandmother, whatever it is that you're wanting to step into, this podcast is going to give you the tools to do that. And so this week, I want to continue talking about this concept of being faithful to you. And I want to share one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's the daughters of Zelophehad, and this is found in Numbers. Well, the daughters of Zelophehad, there were five of them. When he passed away, back in those times, women, when they weren't married or they didn't have children, they basically didn't get any inheritance. And so they petitioned Moses and the priests to give them the inheritance that their father had left. And I love that story because part of why I love the concept of stepping into freedom for you and for me, for every woman, is that it requires releasing those thoughts of the way things have always been. You know, way back in those biblical times, those women had restrictions, but that's not so different than some of the things that we have today. We may not have the outward restrictions like they had, that we couldn't inherit land if we didn't have a husband or a son, but we have inner restrictions. Inner restrictions based on what people have told us throughout our life. You know, I was thinking about this the other day as I was preparing this episode for you guys, and I was thinking, for the first 21 years of our life or more, if you did graduate level work, you know, many of you are, MD, PhD level. You may have a master's degree like me. And so you have a lot of history of knowing what's next. That if you do these steps, then you're going to get that. And then after we get all of that education, we then have a set of rules that we're given that get this great job and then work for a promotion, build your family, have the children, buy the cars and the homes. But then I'm noticing in this season of my life, and maybe you can relate if you've been working for double digit years, where it's no longer a curriculum where we know what's next, and the ability to chart your own path, whether you are someone where your children are now leaving home, or you're someone who you've been working in corporate America for a long time and you're like, what's next for me? And in this season, what's next, unlike all the other seasons in our lives, it has to come from the inside. And so this whole concept of being faithful to you, it has to first show up in you knowing what you really want. And I want you to just think about that. Are you living the life that you really want right now? Or is it a life that you adopted as a life that you should be living based on what people have told you? You know, maybe you were the oldest and so you were the responsible one. Or maybe you're the one who's always been the smart one, the shoulder that everyone leaned on. You're the one people call for the great advice. Those are typically the women who are attracted to my work, because I'm that woman. You know, attract who we are. And so, in that, though, I want you to just take a pause and just think, do you love your life? You know, when you woke up this morning, did you look towards the rest of the day as something that you're excited to go through with? And if you didn't, then that's just a little wake up call that there may be some aspects of your life where you may not be faithful to you. So I want to give you some indicators of how being unfaithful to you may be showing up. But before I go into this, you have to promise me that this information that I'm sharing with you is not something that you're going to use as a bet to beat yourself up with and to cause some kind of condemnation. I want you to use it as awareness that, okay, these are some areas that I need to pay attention to. So anything that you are expanding into, prime example, over the Christmas break, I every year I do a post about single women at Christmas because I can remember being single at Christmas and it would be a sad time. And because I wanted to be married. And I went through this phase where I was reading a lot of secular books. I think Steve Harvey had a book about, whatever it was, but it wasn't based on the Bible. The Bible says that God makes me a wife, right? God makes me a wife. And I knew I was a wife, but I was single. And there was all of this advice about when you go on a date, don't tell the man you want to be married because you'll appear desperate. And I decided to not adopt those thoughts. This is an example of being faithful to me. I was not going to be ashamed of the fact that I wanted to be married. And I remember going on one date. I was on dating online. And I remember the guy asking me, well, what are your goals? And I said, well, I want to be married. And he just looked, he was like, you're not supposed to say that on the first date. And I said, well, just because I'm saying it doesn't mean I'm talking about being married to you, but that is what I want to do. And so that's an example. I want you to think about, are you leaning into being faithful to you in spite of how it may be received? I want to continue with this whole December. I wrote something on my Facebook page about my heart goes out to single women, and I wanted to tell them to keep the faith. Well, someone wrote me back and on my page about how I was demeaning, how my beliefs were old, and I just wrote back in a loving way, thank you for sharing. And I'm sharing that with you because there would have been a time when I would have thought that I needed to defend my position or call her a hater or, make some big deal. But when you're faithful to you, you are grounded in a place where you don't have to defend your position to anyone else. You can lovingly accept that someone else has a different opinion because you are sold on your own opinion. And I can remember a time when if someone challenged my beliefs or challenged what the way I was operating or showing up, then I would feel like, okay, who are they? Why are they doing that? But being faithful to you is all about you looking at what do I really want? And as I'm talking about this, I want you to think about it. What is it that you really want when it comes to every area of your life? Your spiritual growth, your relationships, and all of your relationships, not just romantic, but platonic, your friendships, your family relationships, all of them. When it comes to the way you give back to society, when it comes to your health, there are so many aspects to us as women. This world wants to reduce us to trying to change our body or change the color of our hair or take the wrinkles away. But I really want you to look at if I'm faithful to the true me, not the exterior, but the true you that whispers to you when you're by yourself, nudging you to do that thing, to write that book, to find love, to get that weight off, whatever it is. We all have that whisper from God that's calling us to a next level. That's the whisper that I challenge you to be faithful to. Because being unfaithful to that whisper is what causes us to overeat, to overspend, to overcompensate by performing. I used to be that person where I would overcompensate by achieving so much because it was my way of compensating for not listening to that voice that this career is just not working for me anymore. Can you relate to that? I was in a career that really paid well. I mean, six figures. For some people, that may not be well, but it paid well by my standards at the time. But I felt unfulfilled. And is that you? Can you relate to a good life, but still a part of you wants better? And what I want this podcast to do for you is for you to give yourself permission to be okay to go for better, to be grateful for the good life you have. Maybe even you have a great life right now, but you want it to be even better, and that's okay. But the thing that you cannot continue to do is to be unfaithful to you. And we as women, we have a track record of being faithful to our husbands, to our children, to our parents, to our siblings, to our sorority sisters, to the people at church. But then when it comes to the beautiful woman in the mirror, somewhere along the way, we made it okay to say one thing and do another. And I want to wake you up to the idea that you deserve to be faithful to you. All right. So that's what I have for you this week. Listen, if you want to do deeper work on how you need to intentionally think to be faithful to you, then I would love to have you in the Freedom Academy. You should see somewhere around this video where you can get more information about how you and I can take this work deeper so that you can be faithful to you, faithful to that voice that's calling you to that next level, so that you can say yes to your absolute best. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next